The fuck? Oh my god, I thought I was under attack. Oh, Jesus Christ. Hey guys, welcome back. Even though it should technically be you guys welcoming me back, which, right off the bat, I want to say thank you guys so much for the outpouring of love and support that you left on my last post. There are not human words available on earth for me to express just how thankful and appreciative I am of this incredible community that we're building. You guys are amazing and you really helped to pull me out of my funk. So again, I just want to say thank you so much. I love you guys and I'm super excited to be back and filming again. If you're new here, likely none of that made sense to you, which is fine. Welcome to my fresh, clean slate. My name is Jessica, and here on my channel, I explore new true crime cases or creepy history topics each week. My last upload featured the one and only naked strangling Joseph Oberhansley, which that's not even really what that case is about, but I don't know, for some reason, it makes me laugh. If you'd like to know how that whole situation went down, I will make sure to have that video linked up here in the card for you. And if you're just interested in true crime and creepy history in general like me, and you'd like to join me back here each week, go ahead and subscribe to my channel down below. Before we get started on today's story, I do have a couple of things I want to talk about. If you're not interested in that, the story starts right here, so make your move, I guess. First of all, I just want to say thank you to Jossie for requesting today's story. It's the first request I've ever received for a case that I actually already had on my list of things to film, so I figured now must be the time. Thanks again for requesting this one and for always being such an active member of the community. It does not go unnoticed and is very appreciated. Speaking of our community, not only did we hit 300 subscribers, but in my absence, we've pretty well surpassed that. But I want to thank you guys so much for subscribing, whether you've been here since the beginning or whether you're new. Whatever the case may be, I know that some people wouldn't even bat an eye at 300 subscribers, but to me, it's insane. I'm thankful for each and every one of you, and I'm just so happy that you're all here. I know a big portion of you came over at the recommendation of Saki over at the InvestiGator, so I want to say thank you to her for her continued support and for introducing me to her wonderful audience as well. If you've never checked out her channel before, I highly recommend doing so. She puts out incredible content covering so many fascinating cases that really aren't that well known. So I will make sure to have her channel linked in the description box down below. And the last thing I want to cover before we get into today's story is actually a content warning. Today's case involves the murder of a small child, so if you are not in the headspace to hear about that, I completely understand. And I urge you to do what is best for you. If that means clicking out of this video, then have a good rest of your day, and I hope to see you back here in my next one. Woo! I think that covers everything, so I will kindly stop yammering on and get into today's case. Even though I'm the one telling you about today's case, so I really won't be shutting up at all. To the case. Theresa Jolynn Ritchie was born on October 21st, 1970 in Montgomery County, Ohio. Obviously, her first name is Theresa, but I typically hear her referred to as Jolynn, so that's what I'm going to be referring to her as from here on out. Jolynn had an incredibly troubled childhood, with a lot of the incidents that we're going to be talking about happening at an alarmingly young age. For starters, she was born to alcoholic parents, which, I'm sorry, but isn't setting anyone up for success. She tried to take her own life at the age of 7 by attempting to overdose on aspirin, which to me is just incomprehensible. For a child that young to feel inclined to end their life is heart-wrenching. With alcoholic parents and a suicide attempt at such a young age, my personal speculation here is that her home life was miserable. I don't know that for sure, but it's definitely the feeling I get. She attended school in Northridge Township, Ohio through elementary and junior high, and a former classmate of hers did not have awesome things to say about her. He claimed that she was kind of a bully and that she was extremely rebellious and kind of always in trouble. Obviously, I can't confirm this with 100% certainty because I wasn't there, but as we move through the story, I'm sure those claims won't be difficult for you to believe. This former classmate of hers is actually a YouTuber as well, so I'll make sure to have the videos that he's done on this case linked in the description box down below if you'd like to hear his claims firsthand. But it's all these things combined that lead me to believe that she had a shitty home life. I I don't think it's typical for children in stable homes to lash out at their peers or try to take their own lives. There's exceptions to everything, but you get what I'm trying to say. Jolynn's schooling and, honestly, childhood was cut short when she dropped out and left home at 13, just before starting high school. This was all part of a larger plan that she had to run away to Arizona with her 19-year-old boyfriend, Edward. Once in Arizona, by 14, Jolynn and Edward had their first baby, a boy whom they also named Edward. Her son Gregory was born a year after that, followed by her son Timothy when she was 17. Now, assuming because she was not of legal age to do so, Jolynn and Edward never ended up getting married, and the couple did eventually go their separate ways. Following the split, Jolynn made her way back to Ohio, where she met and married the man that she considers to be the love of her life, Mr. Denton Ritchie. Jolynn and Denton actually welcomed a daughter of their own just months before the two were married. Samantha Raylyn Ritchie was born on September 4th, 1990, and the couple was then married on November 16th, 1990. Things seemed to go fine at first, as far as one can find on the internet. But just 1 month into the Ritchies' marriage, Denton, who was serving as a sergeant in the U.S. Army Reserve, was called to deploy for the Persian Gulf War, which Jolynn did not handle well. In her husband's absence, she started heavily drinking and using cocaine, which wasn't the most constructive solution with a newborn baby at home, but it's how she chose to cope. Unfortunately, things for Jolynn really spiraled out of control from there. And in 1994, she was arrested for disorderly conduct, intoxication, and felonious assault. Out of those charges, she was ultimately convicted of assault and sentenced to 30 days in jail. However, those 30 days were suspended, and she was then ordered to pay court costs and placed on 6 months probation. Basically, as long as she complied with the terms of her probation, her case would likely be dismissed without her ever serving any jail time. Probation, however, did not serve as the kick in the pants to Jolynn that I think the court system was hoping for. In fact, she really didn't change anything about her day-to-day life. She continued drinking and doing drugs. It's reported that she lived in absolute filth and that the neighbors were actually concerned that she was not adequately caring for Samantha. And this all went on right up until the day that her husband walked back in the front door from his deployment. It should go without saying that he was appalled when he returned. It's like he'd walked out of one life, but back home into a completely different one. And the new one wasn't very ideal, to say the least, and Denton was not having it. He told Jolynn that not only did he want a divorce, but with that, he wanted his child. And when she refused, he went on to petition the Montgomery County Domestic Relations Court for custody of Samantha. He filed this petition in May of 1995, just before their divorce was finalized in June of the same year. And right here, you guys, is the gut-wrenching, heartbreaking, white-hot rage-inducing mistake that led directly to Samantha Ritchie's death. Despite everything that the courts knew about this woman, and despite every effort that Denton Ritchie made to fight for his daughter, Jolynn was awarded full custody of Samantha on July 11th, 1995. And it would only take 7 days for this decision to prove deadly. At 11 a.m. on July 18th, 1995, Jolynn Ritchie called 911 to report her daughter Samantha missing. She explained that she'd put Samantha to bed late on the night of the 17th, before she herself had turned in at 2:30 a.m. on the morning of the 18th. And that when she'd woken up around 10 a.m., she'd realized that her daughter was missing. Police responded to the call, and almost instantaneously, this story blew up. The local media covered the story nonstop, and Samantha's picture was plastered everywhere. Because of this, over 700 volunteers came out to help search the neighborhood and surrounding areas for Samantha. And I think over the few days that they searched, they handed out upwards of 30,000 missing persons posters to help spread the word about Samantha's disappearance. Volunteers also took it upon themselves to hold a candlelight vigil right outside of Samantha's house the day after she was reported missing. People in the community were incredibly shaken up by this little girl's disappearance, and I mean, I think anyone would be. At that point, you don't know the circumstances. Did she wander off, and is she lost and scared? Was she taken, and is she being held somewhere against her will? If someone did this, are they going to come back and strike again? Are other children in the neighborhood at risk as well? When stories like this first break, people kind of go into a tailspin because there's so many circumstances that aren't known and so many what-if scenarios that could play out. Understandably, it was a really dark and scary time, not just for Samantha's family, but for the community at large. While, yes, neighbors and volunteers came out in full force to help search for Samantha, no one was as head down and determined to bring that little girl home as Denton Ritchie. From the moment he found out his daughter was missing, Denton did not sleep, eat, or even entertain a conversation with the media. He was so engrossed in searching for his daughter that 2 days after she disappeared, he actually collapsed, I assume from exhaustion and dehydration. But he didn't care about himself in that moment. All he cared about was finding Samantha so that maybe, given the events at hand, he could reopen the custody conversation. So Samantha's dad is present and accounted for, but where was Jolynn through these tireless days of searching, you may be asking? Well, it's reported that Jolynn was too busy throwing back booze with an old boyfriend to join those out looking for her daughter. That's Gatorade, not booze. Unfortunately, the people who actually cared enough to put effort into looking for Samantha had no idea that their search was doomed from the start. And on July 22nd, 1995, 4 days after she'd been reported missing, Samantha Ritchie's body was found submerged in a water-filled pit in an abandoned foundry a few blocks from her home. It was determined that she'd passed away from blunt force trauma to the head, which meant that this was no accident. This was a cruel and deliberate murder. The community was shocked and incredibly saddened by the discovery of Samantha's body. I think a lot of people maintained a high level of hope that she would be found and brought home safely. So being hit with the reality that she really was gone was extremely difficult for everyone to come to terms with. But even through the sadness, it didn't take long for the rumors and the finger pointing to start. And most of those fingies were pointing hard at Jolynn. Most notably were those of Miss Vicky Hammond. Quick sidebar. At the time of Samantha's disappearance, Jolynn was recovering from a broken wrist, arm, I don't know, something was fucked up and she had on a cast. And Vicky contacted police to let them know that Jolynn had once said in passing that her cast would make a good weapon, which is a weird thing to say, but whatevs. That is until Jolynn removed her own cast at Vicky's house and asked her to dispose of it. So not only did she remove her own cast, which I'm pretty sure would not be advised by any medical professional, but she then tried to leave her dirty little cast at her friend's house. Weird. Luckily, Vicky thought so too, so she secretly kept it and turned it over to police. Police only looked into Theresa for 2 weeks before publicly announcing on August 3rd, 1995, that Theresa had confessed to Samantha's murder. But plot twist, she wasn't the only one arrested. Arrested right alongside of her was her boyfriend, Ernest Vernell Brooks. But Ernest was not being charged with murder. Instead, Ernest offered to tell police everything. He offered to plead guilty and testify against Theresa in exchange for a lighter charge, which is exactly what happened. I gave a content warning at the beginning of the video, but we are about to get into the actual circumstances surrounding Samantha's death, so proceed with caution. Or proceed to this timestamp right here. In his confession, Ernest explained to police that on the evening of July 17th into July 18th, he and Theresa had been bumping uglies when Samantha had wandered into the room, assumably looking for her mother. Now, I'm sure all parents have been caught or almost caught in the act at some point, and depending on the degree to which you're caught, you handle it appropriately. But instead of handling it appropriately, what Jolynn proceeded to do was hit Samantha over the head with her cast. And when that wasn't efficient enough, she finished off the beating with a wrench. That's why this little girl lost her life. Because her mother was too irresponsible to lock a fucking door, which led to her rendezvous with her boyfriend being interrupted. That's why she saw fit to murder her 4-year-old daughter. There are also no human words available on Earth to capture what a heinous and disgusting person this woman is. Ugh. Theresa was officially indicted on August 31st, 1995. She was charged with murder, abuse of a corpse, inducing panic, and tampering with evidence, to which she pleaded non-guilty, but she'd also confessed, so I don't know. I do know that her bail was set at $1 million. Her trial began on February 1st, 1996, and lasted 2 weeks. Ernest did testify, explaining to the court that he'd witnessed with his own 2 eyes Jolynn Ritchie beat Samantha to death with her cast and a wrench. On February 14th, 1996, after just 5 hours of deliberation, the jury of 6 men and 6 women found Theresa Jolynn Ritchie guilty of murder, gross abuse of a corpse, 2 counts of tampering with evidence, making a false alarm, and inducing panic. It's said that Theresa showed no emotion through most, if not all, of the court proceedings, not even when the prosecutor described Samantha's last moments alive. Rather, that she was the kind of gal that was caught joking and flirting with deputies just before the verdict was read. This woman is trash. And if I'm being honest, I think she got off easy. She was sentenced to 21 years to life. 15 years specifically for Samantha's murder and 6 additional years for all that extra stuff they threw in. Her first opportunity at parole would come after those initial 15 years for the murder charge. 15 years for caving in her daughter's head with a cast and a wrench. Really? So Theresa's first parole hearing came up in 2010, and let me tell you, people were pissed. I think it came up a lot quicker than people were anticipating. Denton, in particular, was vehemently against his ex-wife's release, stating, quote, "I hate her for what she did. She did a heinous crime and deserves to rot." I don't disagree. Don't get me wrong. I don't personally believe that every person that commits a murder deserves a life sentence. But to kill a child at all, let alone in such a heinous way, I just don't think there's any amount of rehabilitation that can fix someone like that. Luckily, largely thanks to a massive petition that was circulated by Jolynn's family, she was denied parole, meaning she'd serve at least an additional 10 years before she was eligible again. Denton Ritchie has said he is ready and determined to fight it anytime that Jolynn is eligible for release, stating, quote, "As long as I'm breathing, I'm going to keep her there. That's where she's going to be." She was eligible for parole again in 2020, but was also denied. And that pretty much brings us to present day. Jolynn is currently 50 years old and incarcerated at the Ohio Reformatory for Women, which is where she will remain until her next chance at parole in April of 2030 when she's 60. And unfortunately, that about sums up our story. It's an awful one, I know. So if you made it all the way to the end, just know that I appreciate you. Rest in peace to poor Samantha. I wish there was more that I could tell you specifically about her, but there really isn't. Her life was senselessly taken from her before she really even got a chance to live it. Let me know your thoughts on this case in the comments down below. Also, if you have any requests for cases, feel free to drop those down below as well. As always, I thank you so much for taking the time to watch this video and to listen to this story. If you haven't already and you'd like to, go ahead and subscribe to my channel. I put out new true crime or creepy history content each week, and I would love to catch you back here in my next video. Until then, stay safe and have a good week. Bye, guys.